Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we have Sarah Centrella, the New York Times bestselling author of not one, but two books, Hustle, Believe, Receive, and Future Boards. On today's episode, Sarah talks to us about her story, where she started, how she really used future boards in her own life to become the success that she is today, helping thousands upon thousands of women now across the country build their own future boards and live the life of their dreams. You are going to want to have a pen and paper to jot down some of the very tangible advice that Sarah shares with us. And we're going to jump right into the episode. So here we go. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Elise. I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, first, let me tell you, because I think for our listeners out there, they need to understand that you have now written two New York Times bestsellers, very much in the space of self-improvement, right? Mm-hmm. But your life, in terms of your journey to getting here, did not necessarily start out as, oh, I'm going to be the author of two New York Times bestselling books. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
It definitely did not start there. In fact, I think I came to self-improvement, or whatever the term is that we want to use, almost kind of kicking and screaming. It was definitely not my natural habitat, if you will. But my whole kind of journey to get here started with the implosion of my entire life, really a little over a decade ago. 2008, September 2008, I read a text message on my husband's phone and found out that he had been having an affair and basically living a double life. And of course, it kind of came at the culmination of everything was, already going wrong. We just lost our house and the financial crisis. I had twins. They were like a year old, just filed bankruptcy. So it was like literally everything was already imploding. And that was kind of the cherry on the top, if you will. And it ended our marriage in 10 minutes. He literally got out of the shower, kissed the kids goodbye, and it was done. And we had been together since we were 16 years old,
Wow.
for 8 years. And so it was so traumatic, literally on every level across the board. And the first thing I started thinking about was, how do I survive? I was a stay-at-home mom up to that point. And then worked, and I had these tiny babies, which daycare is the cost of a mortgage. And, moms out there know. And so I remember like that, literally that night, I just couldn't get off the floor, and my brain, the controller in me was trying to fix the situation. Like a lot of times we do, just what can I do? Like, what am I supposed to tangibly do? How do I move on? And I just kept thinking, there's no way, like I can't do it. And I didn't know anybody at that point who was a single parent. I'd never known anyone who was a single parent. So 2008, there was no social media back in the day. And so it was just a very different world. And I think the thing that changed everything was in that really, really dark space. When I kept on just saying, I can't, I don't know how to get up tomorrow. There was this, I hate saying this voice because it sounds so crazy, but whether it's intuition or you can put any name on it you want, but it was very kind of a distinct pushback. And it really just said, what if you can? And that was it. That was it. It didn't give me a plan. It didn't tell me how, but it was enough hope to just get me started. And those words have been such an impactful part of everything I do, because it just, if you put those two words together, what if, and you get it out of the negative and into the positive, it really starts to open a path for you. And that's what it did to begin the process.
First of all, I love the words, what if. It's in business, in life. I just think it is such an amazing skill to have inside of you. And it comes from within, right? It's very much like, okay, maybe things are horrible, but what if, right? There's that hope. It's it's hope.
It's really just hope. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think most people are used to hearing those words in a way that tears down everything positive in their life, honestly, right? So they're used to saying, what if I fail? What if I'm no good? What if nobody likes me? All of that stuff, right? So they're used to using it in a way to literally rip apart anything positive.
Right.
And in that moment, when it gave me hope, all of a sudden I really realize it, and I talk about it a little bit in future boards, it can be the starting point for anybody, whether you lost your dreams, you don't know what your dreams are, if you're, going through a rough time, or if you're not, literally start putting those two words together in a way that can create a path for you. Right. So if I'm successful, what does that mean? How do I get there? What does it look like? Why do I want it?
Right. Yeah. Right. So there's one part of your story that I think that I've heard before that I think would be useful for people to hear as well, which is how you came upon this notion that your husband was having an affair. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I thought that, you've been watching TV earlier in the day. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about, how you knew to figure it out?
Yeah, it's crazy how Oprah always says the universe, what does it say? Like, will knock on your door and, a couple times. And if you're not paying attention, it'll just kick the door down or something along those lines. And back then, her daily show was on. And then that was the only exposure I had ever had to self-help concepts. Like, I'd never read a self-help book before. Like, she was as close as you get to a self-help guru, back in the day for me. And her show was on that day. And the topic was something along the lines of how to know if your partner is cheating. And I remember so distinctly, I was folding laundry, for these babies that were like a year old. And any mom knows that it's not like the most glamorous time of life when you're dealing with 3 little kids, right? But I remember like looking at the TV and be like, oh God, that sucks. Today isn't a great show. You know what I mean? Like, you look forward to it all day back when we had live TV, right? I was like, this doesn't apply to me. So I muted it, went about my day. But every time I would go back in the living room, the little screen things would flap on what they were talking about. And I remember looking up and it said, if your partner hides their phone or turns their phone over. And again, remember back 2008, like, I didn't even text. I didn't even know you could do that. We didn't have smartphones. We didn't have all the stuff we have now. And I was like, that's weird. Just continued about my day. So literally when he had come home and I was cooking dinner and then he went and got in the shower, it just came back like a reader board. And it was like, where's his phone? And it was the second I had that question in my head that I knew. It was just, I can't even explain it. It was just instantaneously. I was like, oh my God, and it was like this flash of just chill that went through me. And it was crazy. I didn't even know that he texted. I mean, that's how blindsided I was. And I just opened it up and it was the first text on there. And it said the perfect thing. I got to thank the universe for that because it was a very open and shut case. It said, I can't wait till you're all mine, finally free, no more sharing, winky face. I was like, well, that's an open and shut case. Right. Out of that one.
Right. And then you confronted him and he basically within a few minutes, he was out and gone.
Yeah. He was in the shower. I just went in and turned the shower off. He was like soaping up and I was like, what is this? He got his clothes on soaking wet, kissed the kids goodbye, threw his wedding ring at me and left.
Yeah.
It was just, it was crazy.
So your intuition told you that something wasn't right.
Yeah.
How much do you rely on your intuition just generally in your life?
I would say I've had to learn how to listen to it and how to pay attention and then how to act on it. Yeah. I think in that particular, there was probably was warning signs up to them, but I was not listening. Right. I don't think anything ever happens in an instant, but I didn't see any of them if there were. And even in retrospect, I didn't see a lot of them. So I actually am such a huge proponent of listening to our gut or our intuition now. And I try to teach women how to do that and how to tell the difference between genuine intuition and a block. Because a lot of times, like, we create blocks for ourselves, like we make stuff up in our head, if you will, and create it. There's a difference between that and genuine intuition. But if you follow that intuition, I truly believe it will never steer you wrong. Right. I always say it's like we're all built with a life coach. It is your life coach. It's like, hello, take a right. And you're like, but no, the right isn't great. I'm going to go ahead and take a left. And then, you pay the consequence. So once you start paying attention and really being present in your life, it really just takes a couple times not listening to it and seeing how that went for you to really start being like, okay, I'm going to make some different decisions. I'm going to listen to
Okay. Well, I want to circle back to this because I think this is something that we find that women really struggle with. This idea of the self-awareness. Like, how do I really know if like what's happening, what I'm feeling and what it means for me? And is it a block, like a story I'm telling myself,
Right.
or is it real? And kind
Yeah.
of understanding that. So I'd love to come back to that, but I first want to make sure people understand. I would love for you to talk a little bit about what is a future board and how does somebody use it? Because all of this is related, right? So could you talk a little bit about that?
The future boards kind of came about by that first year of me realizing I had to invent a new life because the life I knew had just imploded, right? And so being a visual person, I just started kind of honestly fantasizing and creating it in my head because it was a blank slate at that point. And it also made me feel good. So the more times I kind of fantasize about what does success look like? Where would I like to vacation? If I could get promoted, what would that be like? All that kind of stuff. Then a couple months into when I finally did get a job, I just went on Google and I started searching for pictures of what I had been thinking about already. And that's the biggest difference. I mean, there's so many differences between a future board and old school vision boarding, but that's a huge one. You decide what you want first. You create it in your head. You live it as moments in your mind before it happens. You get clarity on all of that. And then you look for pictures that are very specifically exactly what's in your head. And that is where the magic lies. I'm telling you, after I did that and kind of was able to see physically what my life was going to be like in the future that I was building, it started literally coming to life, kind of sci-fi style, a year and a half after he left. And it was so dramatic that there was just no denying it. I mean, even the people in my life were like, what is going on? Like I couldn't make it up if I tried.
I mean, so can you give us some examples so people can kind of wrap their head around what it means? Yeah. So you said to yourself, it all started with the what if, right? The hope. Like what if, and then you started envisioning what your future could look like. Yeah. What did you do then? How does the future board come to life?
Yeah. So that envisioning, I call it the dream. So it just was giving myself permission to just dream without a lot of, conditions. How can I afford it? When, blah, 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 just letting it be a happy place. So that's my first tip for everybody. Give yourself permission to just drop into those dreams, let them feel good and exciting, and go there as much as you can. So if you can do that, you're already creating and you're halfway on the way. And then when I had put the pictures together of everything that was in my head, it was something I looked at my desk at work every day, for 8 hours, 9 hours a day. And as I did that without consciously thinking about it, I was, of course, drifting off into the daydreams about the pictures, right? So it's kind of that subconscious and conscious piece together. And of course, I was working. I got a job. I worked really hard. I got promoted, so nothing landed in my lap, magical style, right? But looking at those pictures every day made me so motivated. I was like, what if I could create this for my kids? We weren't even going to have that before with 2 incomes. So man, what if I could do this? And what if I could be the woman I always wanted to be? And what if I could raise my kids any way that I wanted, right? And so all of that, the more I looked at it, the more I dreamed about it, the more motivated I became, the more I was willing to hustle for it, right? And then the kind of the last piece when it started happening, before, like when he left, I went on food stamps. I literally had no income. I was taking cans back for formula. Like it was bad. And I had to sell everything that we owned. So I went from that to, getting a job, working my way up. And a year and a half later, my first manifestation, I was on a business trip in New York City with the CEO of our company. And I had put New York City on the future board back before I got the job. Right. And I just remember like I'd fantasized about it so many times. And then to be standing in Times Square and like, eating the hot dog and having the moment, I just was like, how is this my life? Like I felt like I was Cinderella. Like I just woke up in an alternate universe. And it just, that whole board, everything on that board has manifested except for Oprah and Grease, which you were saying before we got on, I've been on Sherry Salata's show. I love her. She's a great friend of mine. So I consider her my 1 degree of separation.
Oh, from Oprah. Okay, so for people who don't know who Sherry Salata is, she was the executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey show.
Of that show too, which is talk about full circle.
Yeah. So she's somebody who's had a long and successful career in television, and specifically very close to Oprah. So since she worked for her for so many years. So so in terms of the vision, the vision of what you want, right, is the idea for the future board that you think about what is an experience that I want, or what is a thing that I want? How do you think about that?
Such a good question. So that is probably the second largest differentiator. I mean, the first being that we find the pictures to match within our mind. But we don't focus on things at all on a future board. So traditional vision boarding, you're just looking for any random mansion, any random like fancy car in magazines that you can find, right? And you're putting it up there and then you're wondering why it's not happening. Number one, it's random. It isn't you. It's not your dream. It doesn't look like the house you would actually buy, right? So there's no connection
right.
For it to actually happen. And so I am a firm believer in when you start to turn everything into a moment or an experience, that's where the emotional connection happens. Mm-hmm. And if anyone knows anything about the law of attraction or manifesting, they know that it's hugely based on emotion, right? But my problem was when I started, looking into it, no one was telling me how to get that emotion. They were just saying like, go to your Mercedes dealership, drive a Mercedes, and you're going to feel great. And I was like, that sounds like a terrible idea. Like a terrible idea. It sounds like a humiliating idea. It sounds like, there's a horrible, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. But if you start to imagine, hey, if I get that promotion and I, double my income, and I walk into the dealership and I write a check that I know is going to get clear, what would that feel like? And you can do all of that in your mind. And then all of a sudden everything changes. And it's not even about the Mercedes. It's about, wow, when I have accomplished this and I'm in a position to that's my life. What does that feel like? Yeah. And so that motivates a person to get it in a way that, honest to God, the money doesn't, and nor do the things. You have to get it to a place where, what would that feel like for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So and I think that's a really important distinction that people need to understand. This idea that your goal in terms of things that you want, it's not necessarily the thing. It's the feeling you get when you have it.
But most people don't know what that is starting out. They have no idea. They've never even thought to connect the two. They just have a goal. And to me, goals can be almost damaging in a way if you don't know how to make this transition. A lot of people, will set out and write these big, giant goals. Let's say they're making $50,000 a year and they'll write, I want to make $1 million. And then they wonder why they're not motivated. Number one, they don't even know what it would feel like to have $1 million in their bank account. They haven't worked that out in their head.
Right.
It just is a number that sounds good, right? So I always say we don't deal with money at all on our future boards. If you could imagine, a life where, let's say you had unlimited resources, let's get away from dollar amounts altogether, but unlimited resources, what would your life be like? What would your daily life be like? Mm-hmm. Where would your kids go to school? Mm-hmm. What clothes would you wear that you don't wear now? What help would you have in your life that you don't have? How would it free up your time? Where would you vacation? Who would your friends be? Because I have to tell you, they would probably not be the friends you have right now. Very few would.
Interesting.
Very few would be. So people don't think about any of that stuff. And then they wonder why they have, quote, fear of success. When way down deep inside of us, we kind of are afraid that we won't have the same friends, and we're afraid that what that might mean, but we don't dig in, right? We don't understand that as you succeed, and I know you mentioned we have lots of influencers out here, right? Our goal is to succeed. Right. We want to do really well. Right. But if we haven't kind of thought about what does it mean if I literally wake up in a different lifestyle than everyone I know, I need to flesh that out before I get there.
Yeah.
Right. I need to think about that first. And then I can grow and have happiness along the entire journey.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not one of those people that got the money and is miserable.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit. So you mentioned manifesting. Can you talk a little bit about what is manifesting and how does somebody do it?
Yeah. To me, I almost wanted to really come up with a different word for manifesting, because I think a lot of people, it's kind of one of those words that's hot button. Either you're really all about it or you have terrible stereotypes about it that kind of close you off to even thinking about it. For me, what it is if I put an intention and a dream out into the world, and by that I mean allowing my head to do it, right? Like, I don't have to take out a billboard or anything, but if I let myself say, hey, I could be really successful. Hey, I could land that, big contract or whatever. And I start dreaming about what that would look and feel like. Then there's two things that happen. One, I become more motivated. So I'm starting to do what's within my power. I'm excited about, doing the little things that get me there, that make me feel like I'm on the path, right? Mm-hmm. So I call that the hustle. So to me, my version of manifesting, which is different than a lot of other ones out there, is it is a mix of your hustle, your excitement, your figuring it outness, if you will, and a magical element, which is the law of attraction, which has been around since the dawn of time. There's tons of research that it's a real thing, right? That says what I put out, I get back, right? So if I'm doing my hustle and I'm excited about my dream and I'm letting myself go there, then there is an element that will open doors for me, that will give me ideas that will take me to the next level, that will introduce me to somebody who will change my life, that will open the path, that will create the way that I can't force. Does that kind of make sense? And so it's an amazing thing. Yeah. And when it happens to you, when you live a dream that existed and started in your head, I mean, I've never done drugs, but I know it's the best high on the planet. And if people felt it, they would be like, let's go, Right. Yeah. Right. And it usually shows up way better than you ever planned.
So in terms of how somebody can manifest, the first step is to actually put it out into the world. And can you talk a little bit about the importance of why it's so important? Because I think the connection of why you create a future board with then how things get manifested, they're inextricably linked, right? So can you talk about the power of the future board for helping you manifest and making those things happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, and like you said, you have to start with the dream. So that's step one for everything I teach. You really got to let yourself do that. But the thing that makes, I think, a future board so magical is that the process to get to the place where you find the pictures is all about clarity, right? You can't get to a place where you're on Pinterest searching for a picture without actually putting in keyword searches based on your clarity. So when you've done that work to find out, whoa, what does Sarah want? Like, what do I actually want? What does Elise want in all of her, friendships and money and all that? Because it's so different for every human being. And if you don't take the time to get that clarity on literally every part of your life, then it's pointless. And so I think that's probably the biggest differentiator. It's not just randomly, what do I think I want? What does society tell me is successful? Let me just throw it up as pictures. It's custom building your future life. I don't know how else to better say it. Like, it is a custom build. It's the equivalent of building your dream home with the help of an architect and a designer versus doing it yourself, right? And getting that clarity.
How does someone determine what their dream is, right? So you said you have to kind of do the work to figure out what your dream is. How does someone what are some tips for someone who's, just learning about this as we're talking, and they want to take that first step, which sounds like it's the dreaming part. Yeah. How do you determine what's like a dream, as in like it's a fairy tale versus a dream that you really want to pursue?
Ooh, good question. So real quick, I'm going to give your audience two of my favorite assignments. These are ones that I give my clients to start that process, because you're right. That is the hardest question for most people to answer, quite honestly. They don't know what they want. They think they do. They're like, oh yeah, I raised my hand, I know. And then all of a sudden they think about it. They're like, wait, that's what I wanted 5 years ago. I'm kind of different now. Like, what do I want now? So the first one, I want everyone to write down, what do I want? Okay. I want you to marinate on that. And then let's throw some categories, some bullets underneath there to help you kind of start fleshing it out a little bit. Number one, what do I want in relationships? That's all the people. So that is not just your romantic relationship that you have or that you want. That is, do you want mentors? Do you want a team? Do you want help? Would you love to have a trainer? Would you love to have a chef help cook dinner so that you could have free time, right? Really start thinking about, if I could build a dream team of people that I love and support, who would it consist of? Most people don't do that, right? So we start there. The next one is, what do I want on my career side? Career and ambitions, I call it. Okay. So depending on kind of where you're at in life, that could also be like, if you're close to retirement, how do I want to spend my time? Right. So this is kind of the section that's blocking out, what do I either do that I get paid to do, or do because I love it? And it needs a lot more clarity than I bet we have right now. All right. So we want to go best case scenario in every one of these categories. Absolute best case. And then my next one is mind and body. Okay. So how am I taking care of myself? How am I prioritizing time for de-stressing, for the things that matter to me? That's also where faith practice would come in. How am I taking care of myself, right? Best case. What would I love to look like? All of that. Like, we're putting it out there. And then we have what I call passions and joys, which is the part that a lot of women were like, what are you talking about? But it's a super important category. So this is, what do you do, or what would you like to do if you had the time, right? Which we have a lot more of now with COVID, that just makes you happy. Like, do you enjoy gardening, playing with animals, being around horses? Like, so it's stuff you could bring into your life today, regardless of circumstances, that you actually just enjoy. So it could be an hour of joy a week, right? But it's training you to access joy. Yeah. To bring happiness to yourself, to not look for it outside. And then it is one of the fastest ways to start manifesting, because if manifesting is energy, then I'm training myself how to be happy now, which is what going to bring me tons more happiness in the pipeline, right? So that's probably the one that most people have the hardest time figuring out.
The passions and joys.
I have no idea what they're like.
Really?
Yes. Oh, by far.
That's so interesting to me. That's so interesting, because I would think that people kind of know what those things are that make them, that bring them that joy.
You know what's funny? They know what their kids are into, right? They know their kids' hobbies. They probably know their husband's hobbies. Husband likes to golf or whatever. But most women especially have no idea what it is they like to do.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so it's really important. That's an area that is being ignored in a lot of our lives. I do think COVID has helped that, because it did give us time to kind of, maybe paint if you wanted to or whatever. But it's super important that is built in. It's part of the 5 core categories I teach, no matter what. So learn it now. You get better and better, and you like it more and more over time. And then our last one is wealth and abundance. And so you ask yourself, what do I want in that category? If money was just not a thing, I just didn't have to think about it. It was no big deal. It's just not something I talk to my advisor about once a month, but I don't have to worry about. What does that mean? Like, span it out across your whole life. What are the implications of that? What does that feel like? Right. And then honestly, you have a blueprint. You have the starting point of what will become your future board. So you have this whole, creation of the answers to those questions that then you can start searching for.
Do you find that there are certain people who do better with the future boards than others?
I would say in the beginning, when I first started doing it, I thought, oh, anybody can do this. But I was a dreamer. And so I was processing everything through that lens without knowing it. And then when I wrote future boards, I'd done just tons of workshops, and I was actually in the middle of a live workshop, and I was giving out this assignment, and I was saying, money is no object, go for the moon, da, 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 da. And to me as a dreamer, I was like, candy store, right? This is the best thing ever. And I looked into the audience, and half the audience was giving me that look like, oh, I can't wait to get started. And the other half was giving me the look of, why the F am I here and how do I get out? Yeah. And I was in that moment, I was like, what is happening? Like, what's going on? And I just asked, I said, who's a thinker and who's a dreamer? And I got like a 50-50 spread. And I was like, interesting. What's going on? Why are, and they told me, they were like, this is terrifying. And so it was amazing because I got to get into that mindset and understand how to bring them here. Yeah. Because it's a different thing. So if you're an analytical person, you can do this and be just as successful. Right. And if you're a dreamer, you probably had lots of dreams, but you never really executed on most of them. Right. So this teaches you how to do that. And it's the combination of both of those mindsets that make this work. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can figure it out. Well, you can do the homework in the book. It will teach you.
And so in terms of the types of people, the age, like young, old, anybody in between can do this. It's not about like, oh, you have to be pretty early on in your career, or you have to be pretty much well established in your career if you're going to be somebody who can do. Is there any kind of age element to this or experience element?
Such a good question. There is no limit. So my kids have been creating their boards since they were 5 or 6.
Wow.
Share a amazing kind of story to me. My son, who just turned 18 this last weekend, his dream was to play D1 college football. And he had put that on his future board. And I actually just found yesterday my dream life story. So guys, if you want to, that's the second assignment that I was talking about a minute ago. You can find that on my blog and just put in life plan in the search at sarahcentrella.com, and it will teach you how to write that. That's clutch to getting to your future board. But I just found it yesterday, and I'd written it in 2017 when he was in 8th grade. And I had written in a part of, because it's 5 years in the future. And so I had put, Kanan is finishing his first year of college, which he will be next year. And he's there playing D1 football on scholarship. Now, I had completely forgotten that I had ever written that in this story. I found it last night. I was flipping out because him and I just came back from visiting his college in Indiana, where he will be playing D1 football on scholarship.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And so you wanted this. This is what he put on his future board years ago.
Exactly. But parents always ask me, like, can I put my kids' dreams out there too? So this has been his thing. And I had forgotten that I had written his dream into mine as well. So absolutely, we both can. But on the other spectrum of that, I have clients in their 60s. I've worked with clients in their 70s. So there's no age limit at all. And to see those breakthroughs, because I will say, my clients in their 60s and 70s come to me feeling like what's the use? I've already done, what can I possibly manifest now? And to see them have massive breakthroughs and to see them look at their next 20, 30 years in a different light and start to get those shifts and start to manifest. Man, I don't know which is my favorite, doing it with the kids
or doing it. Well, it sounds, and it sounds like it can be life altering for people of all ages, which is kind of incredible, right? How broadly applicable this idea of kind of really thinking about what you want and putting it out there, the idea of putting it down and putting it out there to help make it happen. It's kind of incredible.
And so I want to just say something really quick that I think will resonate with everybody out there. Whatever you've done in your life that you're really proud of, let's say you got a degree or, got a job or whatever, you guys, you did this already. You did everything I'm talking about. You just didn't realize it. And maybe you didn't do it in the exact form. But that's what I love so much about kind of what I teach, is that it is how people succeed. It's how all of us succeed. And I've never met a single person that I've worked with who hasn't used this exact same method to get whatever it was they really wanted. So I'll give you a quick example. All the women on here, or whoever's listening, who's ever been married, will be able to follow this completely, right? So a bride can visualize her entire wedding before it happens, right? And then she starts taking action. She sees all the pictures. She collects her, pictures of the dress and all that, and so that she can start to tell everybody what she wants. She runs the whole thing through in her mind before it happens. And then what? She shows up on the wedding day, and most of the time, right? And it's all playing out in real life how it had played out in her mind beforehand. Mm-hmm. So she did hustle to get it all put together, right? Mm-hmm. Did visualization to imagine it. Mm-hmm. She got all her pictures together, which was her future board. She didn't even know it. So she's doing every single one of these steps that we talk about.
Right.
But what I teach is, like, you guys, you can do that exact same process for anything you've ever wanted.
Right.
Make it happen.
Yeah. Well, I love, I think it's the idea too of being able to look back on something in your life where you wanted it, you went after it, and you were able to get it.
Got it. Yeah. And
using that as the starting point. Yeah. Because if you think about, just how people build confidence, can start with something very small, but you've shown yourself you can do it. And then you move on and you kind of build from there. So I love that you teach that. So take us back. What were you like as a child? Were you manifesting as a child? I'm always so curious about what, somebody like you who has achieved so much and had so much success with the things that you've dreamed of, how you were as a child.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I was a dreamer. I definitely have known that about myself my whole life. I always thought it was a handicap, quite honestly. I thought, because that's what the world tells you. The world's like, shut up about your dreams. You're never going to make it happen. You tell me this great thing, nothing happens. Just don't even tell me anymore, right? So dreamers get very kind of beaten down. And as a child, I grew up very, very, very poor, first of all, and very odd. My parents were in religious cults and things like that. So I was living in my mind my whole childhood. Like, I wasn't exposed to TV or anything else, but looking back, it feels like I had that, because I was like living these movies in my head all the time. And interestingly enough, I wanted to be a singer at that point when I was young. That was kind of the only public persona I knew existed, I guess. But if I go back and I read my journals from when I was, 12 years old or so, what I'm describing is what I do for a living now. It's exactly the same. It's just a different format. So what I described as a child was, I wanted to be on stage, holding the microphone, looking out into the audience, connecting with them, making them feel something, providing something that would change their life. And then I, of course, like lots of people did, I visualized signing my autograph. I have pages and pages of autographs in my journals. And here's the funny thing. It's my name that I sign now, which would not have been had I stayed married, right? So there you go. So you can manifest dreams that you had as a child that at first glance, you think there's no relation, right? At the surface level, you think, of course I don't want to be a singer. That's silly. I was silly when I was a kid. Pull those layers back and say, well, what did I want to feel when I was a kid? What was I daydreaming about feeling? What did I really want to accomplish in those dreams? And when I made that connection, it blew my mind. I could not believe that it was literally, I was living that dream, and all the kind of journey it took to get there. It was crazy to me.
So if somebody wants to start a daily practice that is important for them to get on this journey, what would you say that should be?
Okay. So first and foremost, get your journal out, you guys. Get a pen and paper. Do not do this on anything else. So there's something very important in your brain that processes completely different with a pen and paper. So you're going to get way deeper answers, much clearer answers if you give yourself time and space to write old school. So that's first and foremost. So what that's going to do is it's going to create dreams you didn't know you had, right? Just by answering those questions. That's it. Just answer the questions that we gave earlier. And all of a sudden, Pandora's box will start to open for you, right? And I'm going to challenge you to come back to what if. That's all you have to do in the beginning. That is it. You don't have to figure anything out. If you can allow yourself to say, well, what if?
Yeah.
What if I could go to Paris with my best friend? What if I, did land the contract of a dream and got to like walk the red carpet or whatever your dream is, right? Go there as much as you can. So the thing that changed my life, I truly believe more than anything, was that first year I dropped into fantasy land literally it was unconscious kind of at a point, but probably all day, because it really helped get me away from the negativity that was happening in my life. Guys, that's it. If you leave here with nothing else other than starting to answer those questions and letting yourself daydream, you will begin creating all of that. It will start lining up in your future. That's it. I think of them as planes. They're lining up, right? Ready to land.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the steps will start to organically kick in.
Yeah.
The more you daydream, the more you want it. The more you want anything, the more you're open to figuring it out.
Yeah.
The more you figure it out, the more your hustle starts in, the more opportunities come, the whole thing kicks in.
Yeah.
So let yourself daydream every day.
I love that. So going back to the questions, and hopefully if people are listening in, they can rewind back to those questions you talked about earlier, that starts with what do I want, and kind of going down from there.
Yeah.
You think about those and journal.
Yeah.
Take a pen and paper and start answering those questions, and do that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And then the next kind of iteration of that, that I have my clients do, is that life plan story. And maybe I'll send you the link so people can see it real quick. So it's kind of the evolution of what you're bulleting out. And it's teaching you how to create it on paper first, but the process is creating it as a real life moment in your mind, which is the real thing. And so it's teaching you, we write it as a story, as a first story 5 years in the future. And guys, I am telling you, every time I've written one of those, I did one in 2011, I've lived literally 99% of that. This one is already, when I read it yesterday, I could cross off 3 or 4 things.
Yeah.
So it's that powerful.
Yeah.
It really is.
So what happens when you're on a path and something just is, maybe not feeling like it's right for you, right? So maybe it was something like talking about how for a lot of women, maybe the idea was, okay, well, I was going to get this job and then I was going to get married and do whatever. But then you're on that path, maybe that was part of your life plan.
Yeah.
And it's not feeling right.
Right.
How does somebody deal with that? How do you suggest somebody deal with that, that realization? And
here's the thing, when you start doing this work that we're talking about, that's going to happen. It really is. It's going to uncover a lot, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are afraid of that because that's scary. And I think it doesn't uncover anything that your gut doesn't already know. Let me first say that. But it will bring it glaringly to the surface to a point where you have to make a decision.
Right.
Because here's the thing, if you have relationships in your life that you've known are not good for you, and you start doing this work where you're starting to create a future that you want, they conflict, right? Those two things conflict. And either you will make the decision or the universe will make it for you, like it did for me. The universe imploded my life. I just couldn't even make the decision, but then I was able to create from there, right? And so it will happen to all of us if it hasn't happened to you yet. Here's the thing. I think a lot of people think that there's something wrong with them when that happens, right? Especially if it was a plan that they've always had, let's say. Let's say they went to college, maybe they even got a master's and they did all the things right, quote unquote, right? And they feel like any variation from that equals failure or equals judgment or equals whatever, right? Here's the thing, you guys, we evolve as humans. Like if your plan isn't evolving, of course you're going to hit a dead end. Like it just makes logical sense. But we're not trained to think that way. We're trained to think that you're supposed to create an adjustable plan until you're 35, 30 probably, right? It's the college, it's the blah, blah, blah. So we're all trained for that. But then everyone stops the planning at say 30 or 35 and they're just like, go for it, go out into the world. Good luck.
Go forth.
Yeah. And so for me, I think we do a complete almost rebirth every 5 years if you're paying attention to your life, if you're not exploding. So it's almost my goal to evolve in such a way that I'm almost a recreation or a new creation every 5 years. That my life is up leveling at that rate. Does that kind of make sense? And none of that happens on its own, guys. Yeah. It only happens with intentional creation. Yeah. And so you have to ask yourself these questions at least once a year. Yeah. So I redo my future board every single year. I rewrite my life plan story. I answer all these questions so that I know what I want today, like where I am as a human being at 45 versus I don't want to carry the dreams on that I had at 35. Right. They're not relevant to me anymore. Right. So continue to push yourself and make those adjustments. That means you're an evolved human being. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you're in touch with what's going on. It means you're in touch with who you are as you grow. Right. Growth is freaking beautiful. I mean, to me, that's, if I can grow every year till I'm 100, then that's my measure of success.
Well, and I think you've just answered the next question I had for you, which is how do you deal with failure? And it sounds like you don't view it as failure. You just view it as evolution.
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
well, this is how it's going to evolve for me. Is that the case, or is there something else that we should think that women should be thinking about when it comes to failure and how to deal with failure?
There's literally no such thing as failure. Like it doesn't exist at all. It just exists in our own judgment of it, right? In our own creation of what it is. So it doesn't exist at all. We're all in school, okay? We're in the school of life. We are being taught, and quote unquote failures are, and I know it's cliche, but they literally are the thing that teach you. And here's how it teaches you, right? It says, hey, Sarah, you had that dream. You tried that thing. It didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? Oh, because 50% of that I really hated. I just despised it. It didn't jive with me at all. But 25% of it I was on fire about. And the other part I was like, right? So then what did that teach you? That freaking shook out your dream and got you clear. It made you ditch the 75% that would never have been successful for you anyway. Right. And throw all of that energy into the 25% you loved. So boom, you just up leveled by getting clear. And then guess what? The next one might be kind of the same. And so all of it is literally the education we have to have before we can live our ultimate success. We have to have it. It's necessary. There's no way around it. We don't get to the level of success or enjoying the success without the tweaks. Yeah.
I mean, I love that. I love that notion that there really is no such thing as failure, and that it is just our interpretation. It's the judgment that we put on it. It's just such a wonderful way to think about it. So if somebody wants to get started, what is the best place for? Is it to go and get future boards and pick up a copy and do the homework that's in there and start working that way?
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in you should have resources. So here's my 2 books. And you should have the ability to choose what works best for you. So depending on how serious you are about this, how much you want to master it, and also what your budget is, you can start with the book that's under $20 on Amazon, right? And it has homework in it and all that. But I think, a a lot of people have a hard time translating what they read into their own life, no matter how much, you try to make that available. So I have the workbooks that takes you to level 2, kind of makes it a lot easier for you to customize. You can get those on my website. But then working with someone to figure it out is always the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can go on diets, but we do better when we're working with a trainer or a nutritionist.
Mm-hmm.
It's common sense. So the coaching circle I put together for women is something I'm probably the most proud of, because it's a global community. The women love each other. They support each other. They know each other's dreams. And that's a really incredible way to start to master that. But of course, I have like the rest of the stuff, courses and things like that too.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. We're going to have in the show notes, we'll make sure to put links so everyone can find you. What is, though, if there's one place that is good for people to kind of keep up with what you're doing, where should they go to keep up with you?
Instagram is my platform for sure. So go to Instagram. I'm Sarah Centrella on there. And that's really the only place I'm at these days.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much. This has been so interesting, and I think people will get a lot of immediate value out of what they've heard, and then, hopefully they can start their own journeys. So we appreciate what you do and what you're doing to help women and people kind of move their lives forward. And thank you for spending your time with us today. We're grateful to have you.
Thank you, Eliza. It's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on.